There's a certain appreciation to be had for the simplicity, if not the elegance, of the phrase, when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. Not quite as applicable in modern times, much as I'd love to take a hammer with me whenever I go to the DMV, but in fiction the guy who just smacks the snot out of things that bother him is appealing. It's simple, and as I hinted at, I'm confident in saying all of us have had bad days where nothing would make us happier than to beat the face in of at least one person on our nerves. We may live in a society, jocular reference and all that, but we still have the brains of cavemen waiting to hunt the next woolly mammoth. So with all that said, the Barbarian. They do just that. They live in a world of magic, monsters, gods, and more, and they look at all of them and declare that they are going to be the best by hitting you really hard. And they succeed at least as often as not, because when you dedicate your life to hitting things really hard, by the time you hit higher levels, you're going to be able to hit really damn hard. There's few things that an enemy wants less than an angry barbarian in the space next to them, because at best you're going to get what happened to Loki in the first Avengers before Marvel got bad, and at worst you're going to be a stain on the ground. Let's take a look at this most simple of classes, because while it does have hidden depths, I know why you're here. You're here because Unga Bunga, as it always has been elsewhere as well, is one of the most satisfying ways to play D&D. And hey, really quick, you there, do you like RPGs? You're watching a D&D video, so I assume. Do you like custom rules that let you play against, I don't know, for example, definitely, legally, certainly not, General fucking Grievous? Well, Dungeons No Work now is a Patreon that gives you some awesome rule sets. It's gonna make your gaming experience a little bit better. It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. Each month, you can expect us to put out 2 rule packages for you and your gaming group. You got one designed for the DM and one designed for the player, so each end of the table gets to have some fun. And don't worry, more's coming. We've got plans from fully ready-to-play one-shots, magic item systems, all the way to brand new character species and subclasses, because sometimes the DM needs to suffer. I know I tend to side with the DM in these videos, but sometimes that bastard needs to be in pain too. And hey, you can even vote on what kind of rule packets we'll make in the next few months to make sure you get something you actually want. So, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you go check out our Patreon? It'd be much appreciated. The Barbarian has been around almost since the beginning of D&D, debuting all the way back in 1982 in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It wasn't its own thing, however, but rather a subclass of the fighter, and so of course shared more in common with that class than it did modern-day incarnations. Also, before I go on, the same page that gave us the Barbarian was also selling Citadel miniatures. This was in a D&D magazine, mind you, not a GW one. Remember when GW did that? Remember when they were cool? And we didn't live in a world of 90% Space Marine minis and 10% people gaslighting you into playing Darktide and Space Marine 2 for 100 hours a week? This isn't my mostly Warhammer-based channel, and it isn't Dutch's either, so I'm going to complain all I want until he finally tells me to stop. But yes, Barbarian. Early on, the Barbarian was much more like the fighter, as I said, and with some hefty downsides. Almost no magic was allowed by the Barbarian subclass, and quite frankly, you were heavily encouraged to fight other magic users as well, party members or not. The only exception was cleric magic, and even then it better be low-level magic or the Barb will still freak out. They also couldn't read or write, which could be learned, but it would take a lot of effort. Still, there were reasons to take it beyond wanting to be Conan the Barbarian, but not quite understanding why he hated magic. You were actually decent at surprising people, especially because they were really good at climbing, so you could just muscle your way into the enemy camp and start killing. They hit harder and had more attacks than the basic fighter, were fast, could counter thieves from backstabbing you, and were quite adept at nature stuff. Making friends with animals and tending to basic injuries with simple wooden splints and maybe some herbs was possible, and it kinda reads like Bear Grylls if he was roid raging half the time. You could become friends with animals, be so good at the drum you can communicate over long distances, and you had bonus to charisma checks with other barbarians. It wasn't terribly fleshed out, all things considered, but it was worthwhile enough an option, especially for pure Unga Bunga. Unearthed Arcana 3 years later in 1985, meanwhile, gave it the single funniest ability ever, which is also powerful, at least to me, looking back on it 40 years later. At level 8, you get an ability that takes a week to pull off. That's a long time, and keep in mind that in the early days of D&D, getting to level 8 most likely meant your 20th character is the one who actually survived that long. But assuming you yourself survived that long and the week passes, what happens? Well, you get a mob of 275 barbarians. At level 9, you know what change happens to the ability? 500 barbarians. I'm sure you can figure out what exactly the game expects you to do with 500 barbarians. In 2nd edition, the Barbarian once again didn't make the player's handbook proper, but the complete Barbarian handbook not only gave it to us, but gave everyone quite the nice surprise as well. The Barbarian fighter, of course, is the crude, primitive warrior, smashing people with cudgels as hard as a tidal wave and overpower everyone through sheer muscle and force of will. However, we also got the Barbarian Shaman. A primitive spellcaster in touch with nature unlike any other, making him both a potent healer and soothsayer, but since they're still barbarians, they can still smash you right proper. Both of these classes were the Barbarian, just different ways to play it. The standard Barbarian finally got a D12 for hit points here, turning into the beefy boy we know and love. Using anything but crude weapons is practically crippling yourself, so the finest of steel blades is beyond you, and your armor caps out at lighter stuff like leather or padded at the most. But on the plus side, you can do a wield, still have built-in protection against sneak attacks, and again, D12 of hit points. Can't really overstate that one. More health is always one of the best things you can get. The Shaman has the same framework meanwhile, but loses some stuff in exchange for the magic. They've only got a D10 of hit points for instance, although this still easily makes them the tankiest caster available. They can use most types of magic and at the highest levels, only being locked out of a select few types, which is nice. Both types of Barbarian are heavily discouraged from using more civilized magical items. A magic branch from a sacred grove? Great stuff. But a magical amulet forged by the finest dwarf smiths? Nah man, that's a bit too complex. You don't have to destroy them though, you're just supposed to give it to another party member who isn't role-playing primal. Unless it's particularly cursed or was used by a villain, which is actually a pretty accurate interpretation of Conan the Barbarian, as opposed to just going magic is for nerds. In this edition, barbarians are also encouraged to take penalties to charisma and intelligence outside of their native region. It's not supposed to represent them being dumb, but rather having highly limited experience outside their normal realm. Social customs and civilized society, or even just the way other barbarian groups do things, is beyond them simply due to lack of exposure. But go back home and they're in their element, so they're fine. This isn't a needed feature of the class, by the way, just a suggestion the book makes to give it some flavor. The handbook, as the older ones tend to be, is chock full of information for all sorts of things. There are 5 different interpretations for how a barbarian can use money alternatives, with the advantages, disadvantages, and how more civilized folk react when Grug comes in offering them 50 lion's teeth instead of some gold. But to be frank, that's not the kind of detail I really get into with my stuff, and I'm not going to force the fine people helping with the research on these videos to delve into the specifics of fictional currency exchanges. So instead, here's 3 more subclasses on the second ed Barbarian. Brushrunder is how the makers of D&D handle the fact that humans traditionally hunt you by walking after you for an entire afternoon till you drop dead of exhaustion. They're very social folks, but traditional in the most literal sense of the word, in that for most of humanity's existence, it was traditional to hunt mammoths most of the day and then go back and socialize with the tribe. They make great scouts and are still barbarians, so they can hit well enough, though the archetype's weakness is encouraging you to be a bit forgetful and whimsical. You're on the hunt, fully focused on your prey, and then, oh hey look, that's a really pretty butterfly, I'm gonna go chase it. So if you have ADHD, you have 0 problems role-playing this character archetype. The archetype has 0 problems socializing though, so they can happily fit into any party and hang out. The next is the Wizard Slayer. It's what it sounds like. They were taught by their tribal leaders to kill wizards. Typically evil ones, but I'm sure you can make an argument that someone is evil if you try hard enough. They're typically born or granted abilities to make this easier, such as an innate if small circle of detect good and evil around them, being able to detect magic, and most powerfully, the ability to harm things that usually can only be hurt with magical weapons without one. You also get bonus experience for beating up wizards, but you can't use any magical items, and if you see a wizard that pings the detect good and evil, you have to throw hands. It's a one-trick pony, but if the campaign you're doing features a lot of evil wizards, you're gonna be the MVP of the party easily. Mages in the party might just be a bit uncomfortable around you, for what I would call understandable reasons, given they're calling themselves Wizard Slayers. And finally, the Seer, for those of the Shaman bent. TLDR, what if Crazy Dave was jacked and also knew magic? The background training for them is brutal. They're bound, blinded, and deafened before being put in the woods and told to survive it for days. They have to fight wild animals, plenty, drink evil nightmare juice to overcome their trials, and when this is done, their final test is being told to go travel the world and figure out life. But as a seer, aside from general magic stuff, they're great at reading the future and can even do some basic mind reading. They can learn, for instance, that someone is being motivated by greed, or fear, or is in a great mood, even if they can't get much deeper than that. Not the most intense ability, and it doesn't work on someone whose mind is defended magically or psionically, but you do it by just making a wisdom check, so it's basically free. And if you don't mind the breach of privacy I'm about to say and advocate for, someone defending their mind against that kind of thing in D&D has something to hide, odds are. Oh, and you also have to be a pain in the ass to your party after every fight. You are obligated by class to perform a celebratory ritual and take some ceremonial trophies after every successful fight, because Crazy Dave needs to ensure he's covered in only the finest of nonsense. Moving on to 3.5e D&D, here's some math for you finally. You get a d12 of hit points, 4 plus int times 4 skill points, and your starting skill selection is climb, craft, handle animal, intimidate, jump, listen, ride, survival, and swim. All very barbarian sounding stuff, even crafting, which is presumably intended for stuff like nets and animal traps. You also get 4 plus your int more skill points on leveling as well. As for class features, you can use any weapon and wear any armor but heavy, actually an upgrade all things considered. You are illiterate and need to either spend skill points or multiclass to fix this. And rage finally makes an appearance, though it was a bit different. Instead of taking less damage, you get more health, though you are also easier to hit. A damage resistance and general improvements to rage do come with levels, but at this stage they weren't baked into the class at all times. You get bonuses to morale and of course hitting people during rage, but you can't use any charisma, intelligence, or wisdom skills, and of course neither can you use magic during one, though I presume as a barbarian that wasn't in your game plan to begin with. You also get fatigued after every rage, which while not a problem for individual encounters, might make a lengthy dungeon crawl or a protracted battle difficult for you. Overall, in spite of the differences, however, the barbarian as it's now considered was largely formalized here, and I actually appreciate quite a bit being able to wear up to medium armor now. Conan the Barbarian, who I will absolutely say was the main inspiration for this class existing, wore armor whenever he could and was quite the intelligent man to boot. The 4th edition Barbarian, for given the format of these videos, 4th edition must be discussed if as quickly as possible, had 2 main different archetypes, Rageblood and Thaneblood. Rageblood is an obvious one. You rage, you swing stick real hard. Much like previously, you're the party's main tank and are supposed to take skills like athletics to reflect this. Thaneblood is of all things a charisma barbarian though, encouraged to be equal parts frontline tank and party leader, channeling their rage into a firm leadership presence. Incidentally, it also makes you quite good at intimidating people on account of their charisma focus. Overall though, 4th edition Barbarian couldn't be simpler. Swing stick and rage really good, or swing stick, rage, and talk good. The overall class features meanwhile are 15 plus your con score for health at the start, 6 health per level afterwards, focus on strength, con, and charisma, and either Rageblood Vigor or Thaneborn Triumph depending on what you're doing. And now we can run away from 4th edition like we're all collectively Joseph Joestar. In 5th edition now, so we've almost hit modern times. The handbook does absolutely zero beating around the bush here. Some of the other stuff about them being in tune with nature and whatnot is still present, but barbarians are presented as beings fueled by rage with a disdain for civilized weaklings. Their precious walls and citadels only make them soft, whereas a barbarian is a mighty figure who fights amongst the terrifying savagery of nature and comes out all the stronger for it. Uncomfortable in cities and surrounded by people, they're in their element when there's nothing but wilderness and monsters for miles around. The barbarian, it should be stated, is also a term for the class in the same way that fighter is for more civilized folk. Not every single tribesman out in the wastes is a barbarian, in the same way, of course, that not every town guard is a fighter. Barbarians are those wild men that go beyond their peers, embracing their savagery fully and becoming a being who pushes their physical form beyond all others. And within them, of course, lies a deep-seated rage that they can only summon up a few times before they can't dredge up the energy to again, but drives them to greater and greater glories in an almost supernatural frenzy. For hit points, they get d12 plus con. They're proficient in light and medium armor as well as shields, simple weapons, and martial weapons. Their proficient saving throws are strength and constitution, and they can choose 2 skills to be proficient in between animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival. Pro tip from me as always, gaslight your DM into letting intimidation be a skill for your highest stat if you want to go that route. I despise the fact I need to be good at talking to scare people. I've complained about it before, and I get it for gameplay reasons, but for the purposes of making sense, I'm much more afraid of the guy who ripped a bear's arm off and beat it to death with it than the slimy con man. For their class features, rage is now just about what it is today. Take half damage from normal weapon attacks, deal a bit more damage, and have advantage on anything to do with strength. You still can't cast spells during rage, but who gives a shit? And if you don't hit someone or be hit, your rage ends early, and otherwise lasts a full minute. You get as many rages as your proficiency bonus per long rest, so feel free to use them plenty, especially at high levels. During your rage, you can recklessly attack. You get advantage on attack rolls, and everyone else gets advantage against you. Good stuff, if risky, of course. To help with this, you get unarmored defense, meaning without armor, your AC is 10 plus dex modifier plus con modifier. Given you can hold a shield and still be plenty effective, you can actually have both good AC and health as a barbarian. As for subclasses, oh boy, there's some good stuff here. The basic Berserker is the most boring, but it makes your rage better and you'll be doing that a lot, so it isn't bad. Storm Herald makes a storm show up around whenever you rage to hurt people with, good stuff, and Totem Warrior is bullshit. What you do with that one is ignore all the other options to give you abilities based on a certain animal and pick the Bear Totem, because it gives you resistance to basically all damage types but Psychic. I mean, yeah, it can let you do other things, but like, resistance to everything. Just take Bear. Zealot and Wild Magic, meanwhile, are different flavors of BS. Zealot lets you keep fighting after you hit 0 HP, almost indefinitely. Until your rage ends, you just don't die, especially at higher levels. Do you currently have negative 1 million HP? Who cares, keep swinging. Wild Magic Barbarians lets you do magic, and gives you your own brand of wild magic with a funny table to match. Teleport at random, get more AC, start shooting lightning from your chest like Iron Man. It's wild magic, baby. The best part isn't the effects, it's the look on your friends' faces when they realize wild magic is something they're gonna have to deal with for the rest of the campaign. For some proper lore of barbarians, a lot of the Sword Coast and the northern bits of Faerun are a bit rough to live in. Big old walled cities and whatnot are lacking here, and monsters abound in great numbers. Because of this, fierce and hardy warriors such as the Uthgard barbarians and the seafarers of the Moonshale Isles can be found. Typically, these barbarians are humans and half-orcs, though a good amount of half-elves decide to break from that race's stereotype and are barbarians there as well. Tieflings from tribes known to consort with the Fiend exist as barbarians, and dwarf barbarians are some of the most feared around for the race's great hardiness. And there are plenty of barbarian tribes down in the south as well, the northern ones are just the most famous. One of the standouts are those Uthgard fellas. A black-haired, blue-eyed people, even amongst the non-humans, which is weird but neat. They're divided into 10 great clans. Some actually have proper, if rustic settlements, while others are purely nomadic. With little love for southerners and civilized folk in general, they revere the deity Ulthgar as their chief one. Each of the 10 great clans have a separate animal totem that most represents them and their personal values, and between all of them there's not a single variant of the Uthgar that knowingly or willingly cut down living trees. Those are sacred. I won't go through all of the great tribes, but my personal favorites are the Black Raven tribe, who fly into battle on giant ravens, the Grey Wolf tribe, because they turn into wolves under the full moon, and the Sky Pony tribe, who are fanatically devoted to both Uthgar and one of his allied deities, Tempest. I like them because their name is funny. I like the image of someone being dismissive of meeting with a representative of the Sky Pony tribe, only to be met by a 7-foot-tall brick shithouse of a humanoid and realizing names aren't always indicative of what you'll come across. And now we come to D&D 5.5e, the current incarnation. Allow me to walk you through what the Barbarian entails today. Strength is obviously still your main ability, with a hit die of D12 returning for tank status and saving throws of proficiency in con and strength. These same skill proficiencies as earlier still apply, and you still pick 2 of them. Your armor and weapon proficiencies are exactly the same as well, and yes, you still get shields, and you aren't proficient in any tools. Don't really need to be, I'd argue though, since why lockpick a door when you can just rip it off the hinges and then hit someone over the head with it. At level 1 you get rage and it works mostly the same, with the changes being duration and how it keeps going. You can now keep it going by making a bonus action to just do so, or by hitting an enemy / making them make some kind of saving throw. It also lasts a full 10 minutes now, making it much more useful for long-term combat. You also get weapon mastery at 2 weapons of your choice, and every long rest you can choose a different weapon mastery. At level 2, you get danger sense, advantage on dex saving throws as long as you aren't incapacitated. This is also where you get reckless attack, the real meat and potatoes of Barbarian as far as we're concerned. I'm a gambling man. I choose to gamble on with advantage that I will hit the enemy, and the enemy will somehow fail their advantage attacks against me. And if I lose that bet, I die. Simple as. Now put it on 17 black and let it ride. At level 3 you get your subclass, and without getting too much into those here, you also get Primal Knowledge, which is funny as hell. You get to pick an extra proficiency, which that's fine, but while you're raging you can turn the following checks into a strength one: Acrobatics, Intimidation, Perception, Stealth, and Survival. Which, given that you can now keep rage going with a bonus action, means that as a barbarian in current D&D, you can be so fuck-ass mad that you become the embodiment of stealth. You can also give yourself advantage on your next attack as a bonus action as long as you don't move, and you can't move after doing this. This feature exists if you're a massive bitch and don't want to use reckless attack like a real barbarian, and if I see you using it, I'm gonna hit you. At levels 4, 8, 12, and 16, you get an ability score improvement feat, same as everyone else, and at level 5, you get an extra 10 feet of movement as long as you don't have armor on and extra attack. Level 6, 10, and 14 are your subclass features, and at level 7, you get 2 abilities. Feral Instinct gives you advantage on initiative rolls, which holy shit do I love that, because I can't roll high on those to save my life, and Instinctive Pounce, which when you rage, you can move half your movement for free. Level 9 is Brutal Strike, letting you forego the advantage you get from Reckless Attack in favor of an extra 1d10 of damage, which also lets you slow or push enemies back by hamstringing or forcefully blowing them respectfully. Forcefully blow your enemies mid-fight, why not? Let your barbarian get a little freaky with it. No, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's move on. Level 11 is Relentless Rage. When you hit 0 HP while raging, make a DC 5 con saving throw. If you succeed, you get twice your barbarian level of hit points back. You can keep doing this forever, but the DC does go up by 5 each time until you make a long rest, so eventually it's nat 20 or nothing. Level 13 is Improved Brutal Strike, letting you either prevent a target from making opportunity attacks for a turn and making them roll all saving throws at disadvantage, or giving the next person to hit them plus 5 to the roll. Those are both pretty damn good. Level 15 means Rage Never Ends is something you can do, because rolling initiative replenishes all lost uses of it, and unless you're knocked unconscious, it always lasts the full 10 minutes. Level 17 improves Brutal Strike again, letting it now add 2d10 to the damage of something, and you can pick 2 of the effects. I like to imagine this version of Brutal Strike as the American Dad bit where Stan just bashes Roger's face in. Of course anyone you fight is going to be crying, you just hit them with a chair. Indomitable Might at level 18 means that if you roll lower than your strength score, not modifier but score, on a strength check, you can substitute it with your score. By this point, your strength should be 20, meaning you are never rolling less than a 20 on those checks. But consider, with one of the features earlier mentioned, you can turn stealth into a strength check. Your barbarian is now the stealthiest person in the party. Congratulations. Level 19 lets you pick an epic boon or another feat of your choosing, and at level 20 you get Primal Champion, which gives you plus 4 to strength and con up to a maximum of 25. Now then, with all that covered, let's move on to the character Dutch has thrown together for y'all. And bless him, oh glory be bless him, for he's decided our example character of Barbarian this day is an elf. Leoril's an elf from high up in the mountains. The weather and elements are harsh, and her tribe is a savage and ruthless one. Leoril is a bit short-tempered and hard to get along with, but she ain't quite as harsh as her fellows, so she's decided to strike out into the world and go exploring. Plus, at least I imagine, she'd like to explain to the rest of the world with her fists why elves are perfectly capable of brute strength, thank you very much. She is still an elf, however, so she dual-wields swords to slice people to bits with. Barbarian still, though, keep in mind, so she's going to be doing that explaining by splitting it equally between Elven Grace and using the swords like a hatchet to chop you into bits. For Leoril's stats, Dutch finally remembered to make Constitution our second highest stat. She's got a 16 Strength, 13 Dex, 15 Con, Int of 12, 12 Wisdom, and 4 Charisma. Both because growing up in the mountains with a bunch of savages, she ain't great at talking to people, and per Dutch's own words, he rolled like shit. We've all been there, ain't nothing wrong with it. She'll be a wood elf. Not many forests on the mountains, but it fits better than a high elf or a drow. For elven lineage, Wisdom will be the stat to boost, our skill will be Perception, and for languages, she speaks Elvish of course, but also Giant because sometimes those rampage up there in the mountains. Common, too, but everyone speaks Common, dipshit. It came free with your character. The background will be Guide, the closest thing to the old Outlander background. It gives +1 to Constitution, proficiencies in Stealth and Survival, as well as Cartographer's tools, and the Magic Initiative feat from Druids. Not that while she's raging she can use magic, but hey, could help Leoril do some fancy tricks. The background also gives her a bedroll, a short bow with 20 arrows, said Cartographer's tools to make use out of that skill, a quiver, tent, travel clothes, and a whopping 3 gold. At level 3 Barbarian, we've got proficiency in Athletics, Acrobatics, and Intimidation, which will be fine because we will cry and beg the DM to let Strength be the Intimidation score. If not, she's only going to be really using those first 2 proficiencies, I imagine. Starting with another 75 gold for the class itself, we can buy ourselves 2 swords immediately, which will, however, unfortunately need to wait until level 4 so the proper feat can be taken to use them well. Her subclass will be Totem Barbarian, and of course, we are taking the Bear Totem. Whoever said elves are frail needs to meet Leoril, because unless you're Professor X, you can kiss her ass. And that's our nice little barbarian character, ready to hopefully make some friends if they can get past her brutish personality and chop people into bits with her swords that she wields like axes. As for my own personal recommendation, just make Gotrek. Do that. Pump everything into con and strength, make charisma your dump stat once again, and only take feats that allow you to do more damage or increase your health. You are not here to make friends, you are not here to make allies, you are here to find a glorious death in battle to atone for your sins, and if you just happen to be too good at killing things to get killed yourself, then so be it. Bonus points if you can find a blonde twink of a human fighter bard multiclass character to follow you around and desperately try and keep everyone around you civil as you pick fight after fight. I also once had a DM make a homebrew barbarian class for a droid character in Star Wars. He turned into a Decepticon. So, hey, if you're as good at gaslighting as I am and your DM is as down for nonsense as he was, you can do that with a Warforged, I'm sure. And that was the Barbarian. Other classes pride themselves on subtlety, finesse, and gracefully navigating the world around them. Those people are nerds. Hit things really hard until they stop moving, glorious Barbarian. Show them all that Unga Bunga is something that's never stopped being valid, at least in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons. If you'd be so kind, liking, subscribing, and all those lovely little things would be greatly appreciated. But even if not, thank you for watching, take care out there, and have a good one. The only thing I would make a modern barbarian better, other than my constant bitching over intimidation not inherently being tied to your highest stat, is that I would bring back the funny mob ability from advanced D&D. Yeah, it'd be utter hell and would absolutely destroy modern D&D, but come on now. I have yet to see a single ability funnier than I summon 500 other barbarians to kick your teeth in. D&D used to be fun, man. What happened to us?